And that's going to be a problem, Mr. Speaker. That's going to be a problem for this economy. And if we don't recognize it and realize where these things are leading us, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And it fits, that argument fits with what we're talking about here today. A free trade agreement with Europe, initially thought up 9 years ago in a different time. Let's get back to where we are today and where we need to go in the future with our shipbuilding industry. We have a shipbuilding industry that's in crisis. So we have an industry that's in crisis. Let's kick the legs right out from underneath it. Let's knock it right down on the floor. That's a good idea. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Boy, that's the kind of thinking that can really bring us forward in this world. So when the NDP stands up here and fights tooth and nail for this, with the support of the whole industry, with the support of all the workers in that industry, the collective wisdom of the Liberals and Conservatives, along with the Bloc, have decided, oh no, ideology reigns here. Ideology has to reign. Well, Mr. Speaker, ideology will not do it for us here. We need to think about where our industry has to go. We need to support our industries in this troubled times. We can't afford to make decisions like this. We can't afford to cast loose a major part of the manufacturing potential along our east and west coast, up and down our rivers. The kind of future that we're going to build in this country requires us to continue to support our shipbuilding industry. We can't give this up. By giving it up, we are giving up a significant part of the future of those provinces and territories that rely on this industry, that rely on the products of this industry to develop the new economy, to move Canada ahead. Mr. Speaker, I plead with the other parties. Look at what you're doing here. Take off the blinkers and realize where we are in the world today and where we have to go. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask a question. I just want to clarify also something that occurred earlier today. The member earlier from Burnaby, New Westminster, asked the member from Sackville, Eastern Shore, in terms of what happened under the Liberals, and he referred to the Minister, John Manley. At that time, Mr. Speaker, for you in the record, I was Mr. Manley's Parliamentary Secretary, and I remember there was a motion in this House brought forth by the NDP, of which the Liberal, had it not been for the Liberal team, that motion would have died, and that was to do a review on shipbuilding. And thanks for the record, Mr. Speaker, because, you know, they can make all the statements they want, but this is in the records, and I challenge them to look at them. Had it not been, Mr. Speaker, for the Liberals to vote in favour of that motion, that review wouldn't have started. Then they referred to Mr. Tobin, who took over from Mr. Manley, and I happen to be his Parliamentary Secretary as well. And he commenced moving forward and was making strides until, Mr. Speaker, the NDP, Renee, betrayed Canadians, overthrew the government, and off we went. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from the Western Arctic.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have to say that I've enjoyed the honourable member's question, whatever the question was, but I think I have to refer back to my speech when I say if we go backwards, if we look backwards, if we continue to think of ourselves 9 years ago, when we talk about trade agreements, we're not addressing the needs of Canadians. And for the honourable member to consider that the New Democratic Party may or may not have voted against a review of the shipbuilding industry and compare that to taking off 25% off the tariff that protects Canadian shipbuilding in this world. He's talking about things that are not quite the same, don't have quite the same merit, don't have quite the same importance to this country. Can the member please look at where we're going? Take a look at where we're going and really look at this legislation in that regard.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his intervention. I have in front of me a letter from a shipyard worker. I'm not sure if it's from my riding or the riding of Dartmouth, but he CC'd me on a letter to the Prime Minister where he wrote, "As a worker employed in the shipbuilding industry for a number of years, I wish to express my concern over the EFTA trade agreement presently before Parliament. This is an industry that, with the right support, could employ thousands of workers in this country and provide a major part of the economic stimulus your government has been talking about for this country. To sign a trade agreement that further erodes our ability to compete makes absolutely no sense at this time. For the first time in history, all stakeholders in the shipbuilding industry came together with a position that the EFTA trade agreement would be detrimental to our industry, and shipbuilding should be carved out of such an agreement." And so my question to the honourable member is, could he tell us a bit more about the impacts that he sees that this amendment, not voting for this amendment, could have on our economy? Thank you.
The honourable member for the Western Arctic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I did refer to a number of areas where I think we need to make progress in developing equipment and machinery, and especially in the Arctic, especially for resource development up there, which, you know, in the 70s and 80s we did pretty well with what we built for the North. But really, when you talk about a primary industry like shipbuilding, when you're not talking just simply about building hulls and putting sails on them or putting motors in them, you're talking about integrated industry. You're talking about people that build all the electronics, that build the type of machinery that's used on the ships. And those industries, Mr. Speaker, are attached to other industries. So if we take the legs out of the electronics industry for marine use in our shipbuilding, we're going to see a drop-off in that industry, an inability of that industry to compete in other areas. So what you see is shipbuilding is the prime. All around it is surrounded other industries. So when we pull the prime out, we're going to put the boots to the rest of many other kinds of industries.
Hear, 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 hear.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Burnaby, New Westminster.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the comments from the member from Western Arctic. And you got to say, Mr. Speaker, God love a Liberal. I mean, here you've got Liberals rising up in the House to defend a report 9 years ago that they did absolutely nothing on, while they're getting ready to sell out the entire shipbuilding industry in Canada. You got to have a lot of nerve to do that. I mean, Liberal members have been besieged by hundreds and hundreds of letters from shipyard workers in their ridings, boilermakers, sheet metal workers, people who depend on the shipbuilding industry, and they're just given in the back of their hand. It's absolutely disgraceful, Mr. Speaker, and the Conservatives and Liberals conspiring together are selling out one more industry. They did it with the softwood lumber sellout. Now they're doing it with shipbuilding. So, Mr. Speaker, my question to the member from Western Arctic is, why do Liberals and Conservatives always get it wrong?
The honourable member from the Western Arctic.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've only been here for 3 years. I've only seen the Liberals and Conservatives get it wrong for 3 years. Sorry, I can't really speak to 9 years ago, and I really don't have I don't really want to go there. What I want us is to get it right for Canada. What I'm doing standing up here today speaking to this bill is to try to impress upon people the need to look ahead, not to think of the ideology that you held so dearly to yourselves for many years because you thought this was the way we should go. Look at where we have to go. Consider where we have to go. Don't think about the past. Think about the future.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, thank you kindly for the time. I just want to set the record straight again. The member for Burnaby, New Westminster, said about the sellout of the lumber deal. I chaired that committee, Mr. Speaker, when we did the review, and he was a member. And all the stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, came before committee asking for financial support, which we were ready to give them. We were ready to give them, the Liberal team was, and all of a sudden, Mr. Speaker, what happened again? We agreed with them on the budget 205. They went to bed with the Conservative. The deal went down the drain. $1 billion was left in the U.S., and the lumber deal went down the drain, thanks to the NDP. For the record, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
The honourable member from the Western Arctic.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to stand up again, although I'm really quite... I really don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to go into directions that we don't need to go in this House. Mr. Speaker, the issue in front of us is a 25% tariff that is going to be taken off our shipbuilding industry over the next 3 years, which will actually cripple the industry at a very difficult time for industry generally. So what are we doing, Mr. Speaker? Why are we doing this thing that was created by the Liberals 9 years ago, carried on by the Conservative Party? What is going on in this country?
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Windsor West.
It's an interesting intervention, especially given the fact that we didn't even have enough votes to vote with the Liberals at that time. So obviously the Liberals, once again, can't even do the basic thing of counting again. And this is the issue, is the element really is about the Canadian public was tired of their behavior, and the sponsorship issue is really what's at stake here. And the bluster coming from the member really shows the sensitivity, I think, that they have about this issue, because they know that their minister, David Emerson, who flip-flopped and crossed the floor to the Conservatives, was the mastermind behind this. He sold us out with the softwood lumber deal, is the architect of trying to sell us out with the South Korea deal, which we have been able to stop as New Democrats. And this deal right here, and the heart of the matter is, should be stopped right now. If they want to do something productive, they could carve this element out there and correct their ways. And I hope the honourable member to comment on that.
The honourable member from the Western Arctic.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I mean, the fundamental problem that I see here is that we didn't have enough seats then, and we don't have enough seats now to do the right things for Canadians. So that's what I see the problem is. The solution, of course, is more seats for the New Democratic Party.